Mathematical practice number 5. Use appropriate tools strategically. This is an interesting one because a lot of people think that tools are handheld tools, and some of them are, but some of them are not. So the definition is that we need students to be able to choose tools that are relevant and useful to the problem at hand. If we are measuring something, we don't necessarily need to use a calculator. We don't need to use base 10 blocks. We don't need to use 10 frames. Now we can use base 10 blocks, but that's not necessarily what we're going for. So let me share with you a few tools that you can use. Now, these are just a few of them. There's lots and lots more. We have number lines, blocks, fingers, charts, 10 frames, counters, rulers, calculators, websites, estimation, and your head. Now, some of these, lots of people use in their classroom, and they feel like, oh, yeah, that's okay, like a number line or blocks or charts or 10 frames. What about fingers? Are fingers appropriate, and when should we get them to stop using fingers? Well, the reason why we have a base 10 system is because we have 10 fingers. The reason why we have the system that we have, 10 frames, it's all because we have 10 fingers. So allow them to use their fingers. Now, some people will say, well, it's a crutch. You're right. If you broke your ankle, you would get crutches. Now, if someone said, oh, we've got to take those crutches away, before you were ready, you could continue to injure your ankle. You could make it worse. You wouldn't let it finish healing all the way that it should. So why are we so eager to take away those fingers before students are ready? I was working with a principal the other day, and we were figuring out some numbers, and we had a few numbers to add together, and sure enough, he was using his fingers. And I thought, oh, why are you using your fingers? And he said, well, because it helps me organize things. Yeah, do it. When I help first graders count to 120, I first have them count by tens. And with 10, they put up their thumb, and 20, they put up their next finger, 30, and they continue to count on their fingers by tens. And the reason is because then we start counting. We say 7, 8, 9, we put up our thumb and say 10, 11, 12, 13, and we get up to 19, put up your next finger, 20. And it helps them organize because as first graders, sometimes they get distracted. They get lost in what they're doing. So we use our fingers to keep them organized. I use fingers to count, to multiply. It's okay to use our fingers. These other tools on here are very good tools. For estimation, do we want to get approximate to the answer or do we want to get the exact answer? So estimation is a good tool. And some teachers say, well, students don't take the time to estimate and then get the answer. Right. And how much time do you spend in class teaching them about estimation? If you think that it's important, then teach it. Students know that the most important things we spend the most amount of time on. What about this? This is just one that I thought of. What about a number line? I mean, a ruler. They're the same thing. In first grade, we could have a ruler that just has whole numbers. Second grade, we could have a ruler that has tens on them, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Some of the things that they can do is they can compare numbers on this. They can work on their adding on. They can work on fractions. If you're in third, fourth, and fifth grade, now start adding fractions. Add halves in there in third grade, and fourths in there in fourth grade, and eighths in there in fifth grade. The other thing is they can help students count forward and backwards. The best definition I've heard of number sense is the student can count from any number, to any number, by any number. So in first grade, we can say, okay, I'm going to have you start at 7, and you're going to count forward by ones, 7, 8, 9, 10. In second grade, okay, we're going to start at 7. We're going to count forward by 5s, 7, 12, 17, 22, 27. They can see those patterns. In third grade, now we can start counting backwards. Let's start at 120 and count backwards by ones. Let's start at 95 and count backwards by 5s. And when we get into fractions, what if we had a student start at 4 and count forwards by halves? 4, 4.5, 5, 5.5, 6, 6.5. What if we had them count backwards by halves? What if we're in fifth grade and we have students count backwards by thirds? I want you to start at 6 2/3 and count backwards by thirds. 6 2/3, 6 1/3, 6. What comes before that? Oh, 5 2/3, 5 1/3. So they can see those patterns. In a Joe Bowler book, she says, the difference between high and low achieving students was not that high achievers knew more, but they had learned to be flexible with numbers. And that is our goal, to be flexible with numbers. So how does it help? It helps them visually represent an abstract concept. Eventually, they're not going to need those tools, those visual tools, and because in their mind, they'll be able to visually do that. They'll be able to visualize problems when they see it on the paper. This is where we tie back into the other mathematical practices where we conceptualize and deconceptualize problems. They can see patterns better than just telling them, look, it goes like, no, they can see patterns. And math becomes more visual and less abstract. So let them use tools, give them tools. When is the appropriate time to take it away? When they're not ready to use them anymore. They'll stop using them. So please let them use tools.